right. Good afternoon and welcome to the 37th CALLERLAB Convention. Today is Monday, March 29th, 2010, and this is the Tech Marketing Session. I am Kris Jensen, and your panelists today are Stephen Cole to my left and Patty Greene to my right. And we're going to discuss marketing yourself and perhaps square dancing over the web. I did a handout which just had almost a list of technologies. And what I'm going to do is turn this over to my panelists. And then at the end, we want to allow plenty of time for questions. And I'll also come back and touch on maybe some of the more odder things that I put on this list of technologies and just talk about how those would relate to using technology and the Internet, especially to market square dancing. So what I said the goals were on this group were using the Internet and technology to communicate, to strengthen existing groups, that is, your relationship with your dancers, your club's relationship to the dancers, how to build bonds in your clubs, and also sort of personal communication for callers, how callers can communicate among themselves. And then to talk about using the Internet for marketing, that is to market yourself to dancers, to market events to dancers, to market your club to new dancers, to market square dancing to new dancers. So there are all kinds of ways to use the Internet for both communication and marketing. So I'm going to start first with Patty Greene, who is going to talk about websites and technologies like that. Patty is a caller who used to be in New England and now is in Charlotte, and is also the CALLERLAB's webmaster. So the CALLERLAB website is done by Patty. So, Patty, thank you.
Good afternoon. Glad to see people here. So you're always glad to see people come in the room. I'm going to start with a brief oversight of websites and ways that you can use the Internet in your calling career. I guess the first, why should we have a website? Why should we even have a web presence at all? I get kind of asked that a lot because that's what I do during the day. And how many of you use email? Just about everybody now. How many of you use email to communicate with your club members? Oh, half. How many of your clubs take advantage of the Internet and have information for your club or yourself out on the web? Oh. Email can be a really, the very simplest basic bottom of the rung. Email is a really effective communication tool. I use it personally for booking, confirmation, correspondence, finding out where things are, letting my dancers know if something's coming up, if something's not coming up. More and more, I'm finding that I'm receiving booking requests via email. People, because somebody can send an email at 3 in the morning if they're sleepless. They don't have to wait for when is Patty. Okay, let's see. She's in North Carolina. I'm on the West Coast. So you have to kind of work it so that you know when supper time is and when work time is if you want to speak to them. The web is just a great place to be out and on, and it doesn't take all that much to have a place. For a club, a one page, maybe two at a minimum, can make all the difference in how many visitors you have to your club. Because I know before I go out dancing, before I go to a dance, I will verify where they're dancing because it may have changed since I got since you got the contract. What time? Because clubs it's no longer 8 o'clock to 11. I've got some clubs that start at 7. I've got some that I go to that start at 7:30. Some start at 6:30. A contact information. if I'm not familiar, if I get a request from a club to come call a dance and I'm not familiar with them, the very first place I go before I even call them back is to the web. And if they have a website, I know something about their club. When do they dance? Usually there's information about the level. Where are they located? I can find out how far away it is. If I can't find them on the web, and all I have is no information, which, hey, I'm calling to find out if you'll call for us. We're in Virginia. Our club name is XYZ. Well, Virginia's a pretty big state. You kind of take a guess. So I have a couple of square dance scenarios that can be solved if you have a web presence. Let's say you'd like to find someone to dance in New England. I wouldn't pick up the phone. I'd go online. New England? Oh, look at that. I know if there's a New England area website that lists just about all the clubs in New England. I can find something to do. You're looking for a place to go in your area on a particular night, but you don't remember if any local clubs are dancing. Again, if a local club has something on the web, I can very easily find that out, which for me is really great. You got a friend in somewhere USA and they're interested in square dancing. They know that you square dance and have contacted you to see what you could tell them. I don't know everybody who's calling in Ohio, but I know I could send them to a page and they could at least find some information. Your club wants to take a mystery bus ride to a special dance at a club that is out of your area. You have been tasked with finding a restaurant in the area for your group to eat at, and they want it to be fairly close to the dance location. I go to the web. What's close? You've just moved to the area, and you used to square dance, and you'd like to connect into the local square dance scene. I know some areas there's no information on the web. None. I mean, not even a little blurb. And people are going to the internet to look for information these days because it's convenient and it's 24 hours a day. So what's a minimum for a site that would be like a bare minimum? And it doesn't even have to be fancy. It just has to be well written, look professional, not have typos, and something that has a lot of information. You need dance location. I don't know how many flyers I pick up. I used to do a talk on printed materials, and I would go to wherever the event was, and I would just go down the line and I'd pick up flyers. And I'd pick up the flyer, and it would say, special dance on April 1st at the Swingin' Square Dance Club with Patty Greene. Okay, so I'm supposed to assume that I know that the Swinging Square Dance Club dances on the first Friday of the night, of the week, of the month, and they dance at 8 o'clock. And they dance at the rec center. If you've got somebody who just happens to come to a dance and they're looking for some place to dance, and your flyer has none of that information, they're not going to come to your dance. We turn people away because we don't have that information. And on a website, even if they had www.swingingsquaredancers.com, I could at least pick up that brochure, that flyer, go to the web and go, oh, they dance on the first Friday of the month. Oh, I know where that rec center is. You can find out information if you have it somewhere. And it's not all that expensive. If you have a domain or if you have an email address with your hosting provider, most cable hosting providers and most hosting providers, you can have a free website. Doesn't have any cost to you. They have tools where you can set stuff up without nothing. And it's free, and then you just need to get that word out. Do you need a web name? Somebody asked me the other day, I want to have a website, but I don't think I want to have a domain name because I don't want to pay the $9, $10 a year to get a domain name, which is pretty cheap money for marketing. In the scheme of things, $10 is a lot cheaper than paying $50 for a local ad in a local magazine that's going to reach local dancers. I can pay $10, have pattygreene.com, a free web page with my hosting provider to start, and I've reached everybody in the world who wants to find me. So getting a name is a 50-50 thing. I think it's cheap money. It helps. It's something consistent. What do you include on your site?
A couple things real quick. I'm Stephen Cole, and I work with both Kris and Patty. I live in Tempe, Arizona, and Patty, I need to add a couple things to hers. You are a worldwide presence when you go online. If you say, I'm in Charlottesville on the first Friday of the month, there are a half a dozen Charlottesvilles in the United States. There might even be a couple that are not. Maybe something in Canada. Maybe there's a Charlottesville, Mexico. I don't know. You need to be specific. At least one place on your page that says, I'm in Charlottesville, I'm in North Carolina. That is the right Carolina, right? Yeah. Charlottesville, North Carolina. Sorry, there's two. It needs to be what time. And if you have multiple contact people, that's awesome. More is better, because if you want to find out, are we dancing, are we dark, if there are email addresses, that's always probably preferred by a lot of people, but have a contact number, because there was one time when I was driving north to a dance. It was a 2-hour trip. Head gasket blows in my car. I actually was just out of cell phone range for my network access on my phone. I called my wife. She looks online. Here's the phone number. Called the president. His wife was right behind me. She picks me up. I get to the dance. Without all of those pieces on this worldwide reference, you are in trouble. You need to be as specific as possible. And don't just say, well, sometimes we meet on some Fridays. If you're not sure, then publish a schedule. January, February, March, April, May. Add another page to your site.
I just wanted to add to the domain name issue. I think the $10 is really cheap. It's not only is it instantly there, and the point is that it's memorable. If you can say, well, you can reach me at pattygreene.com, or you can reach me at krisjensen.com, people will remember that instead of, well, you can go to
Wildfire, tilde, ampersand, my name that doesn't make any sense, whack, whack. And what happens if they sell the company? Then you've got all this printed material with that website address that goes nowhere.
Absolutely. And so I create a free account, and it's through like GeoCities, which is no more. They close their shop. Or I create it for my club, the Square Spinners. I then move, but the account still belongs to me. If you pay the money, and I actually have my own domain, I spend more than $10 a month. I think I spend, or a year, I think I actually spend $60 a year for the full package of being a host, having a host, and having all the little pieces behind it, so that I can also call somebody and say, fix this when it breaks. And it has some databases in the back end if I want to make it more robust, if I want to pay somebody to do a little bit more work. But I own it. It's mine. And I can avoid what's called link rot, where links that used to go someplace don't go anywhere anymore. So if you click on this, oh, look at CALLERLAB. Where did it go? Or why did somebody mistype? Somebody did something wrong. By having some ownership, then the club can have that as a resource if it's the club's. You can have that resource if it's yours. You can almost guarantee, there are no guarantees in life other than death and taxes, but you can virtually guarantee that if you own it, that it's going to follow you and you can take care of it.
It's still on. Stephen's going to talk a little bit about some specific ways you can get on the site with social networking and some other things. I'm going to briefly talk on how to use the web for your calling, which there's a lot of ways that you can actually use the web, having a website notwithstanding, to get information, to build out your shtick, your what you do for callers, what you can present to them. The first is, for me, the obvious thing is music research. We have so much music available to us, not just in the square dance world, but outside in the big world too. And even with square dance music, one of the ways that, for showmanship and for letting yourself stand out, everybody can do Will the Circle Be Unbroken. There may be 50 callers in the area that do Will the Circle Be Unbroken. Probably 45 of them do it exactly as the record's written, however it is. Probably a couple more maybe do a different singing call figure. Well, what happens if you decide to make it your own and use more lyrics? You don't have to use the lyrics that are printed on a lyric sheet. You can find the actual lyrics to a song and incorporate them in, and then it becomes uniquely yours, which I think we miss out a lot of times on kind of some of that presentation. And there are great places to go on the web. You can just go to Google if you find a song that seems like it would be interesting, and sometimes the singing calls music is not exactly what in the original flavor of the song. Sometimes it's kind of unrecognizable. But you can go to Google, type in a song name, and you can get a YouTube video of the song sometimes. You can get a little snippet on iTunes or Amazon, or find the lyrics. Usually you can get the lyrics in there. All things that can help us kind of expand our horizon. Maybe somebody says, Steve found me that car commercial, Pata Pata. It's an African song. And he's real, actually, for somebody who's non-musical, he's real good about finding music for me. And he found this Pata Pata song. He said, oh, you should use this for a Pata record. Well, it's in a foreign language, part of it. I don't speak the foreign language. I need to know what that foreign language translates to. Because I'm not using a piece of music that says, go kill people, I'm sleeping with my mother. No, but there may be somewhere out there that speaks African. I think it's in African, and I'm playing something that's really offensive. So I went online and found a translation. I'm like, oh, they're talking about dancing in the streets, basically. There's one part that's a little questionable, but most of it's about just celebrating. I said, I could use that, and I would not have to worry about somebody coming up to me and saying, do you know what that song is really about? Which, did you pick go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add that when you listen to the singing call figures, you have to understand that they're in the studio, they're in a hurry, they want to get out, done, and sometimes you can leave off that swing and promenade, blah, 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 and find the actual tags that they're leaving off, and tell a story with your song. And you can tell their story. The artist told a story with their song, and dancers, I have found, connect with their music, the music that they know. And if you can help them reconnect, then you're going to help them connect with you. And that's a wonderful resource. And you can just even doing a search through Google, or if you're a Bing user or Yahoo, the name of the song with the word lyrics next to it. And suddenly you're like, oh, or you might find 3 different artists have done this song, and you can listen to a way that somebody else presented it, and it's a totally different interpretation. And that just can add to your overall marketability.
Theme night research. I love theme nights. I really do. I think they're fun. So you get hired to do a 70s dance because the club wants to do something a little different. Well, how many of you are 70s music fans? A lot of people aren't. This is just an example. It's such an odd, disco-y, area. Well, for me, if you hire me to do a 70s dance, I'd like to do some music from the 70s. And that doesn't mean singing calls that were recorded in the 70s. That means songs that were popular in the 70s. So there's a great site called, the Top 40 Lyrics. And sometimes I'll go there and I'll just pick a decade and I'll look down through, and I'm amazed at how many singing calls are decade related. And then now I can pull those out. When I do it, I'll find ones that are only in like the top 50 or the top 10. And I'll say, hey, this was the number 1 song, 1961. Do you know it charted with Donny Osmond? And then the dancers are yep, yep, yep. And I've just added something to my dance that I didn't know, and I never would have been able to find out unless I went to the library and researched all the music of the 70s. But it's just a way to kind of bring something to your dancers different, just a little different. There was one club, they hired me for all their decades dances because they knew that they would have decades music and they would learn a little piece of trivia. I think it's pretty cool. The obvious one is choreography. Some of us aren't so good at creating our own choreography. And there are quite a few quality sites. The Cedar site is awesome. There's a lot of submitted choreography there that people from all over have submitted. It's categorized. If you're doing a dance and you want to feature this particular call and you're having trouble coming up with ideas, you can go there and get everything that's got spin chain through, and it will display, and you can pick and choose. And is it easy? Is it hard? Is it medium? Is it weird? Is it quirky? What do you need to know? And I have found a lot of really good figures that I have incorporated into my program by going online. There's a couple of others. You know, if I want some new singing call figures, and I'm not real good at writing them, I can go online and find things that are different than square through 4, right-hand star, left-hand star, touch a quarter, scoot back, which I use, but it'd be nice to do something different, it doesn't even have to be a lot different, because dancers will go, oh, wait, there isn't a square through 3 to get to my element here? It's just another way to use it. I think it's on the
Cedar.net. CEDER.
It's a great. How many of you have inherited records from people who have retired? Were the cue sheets there? Again, Cedar.net has a really great repository of, I know it is, a really great repository of cue sheets that if they're missing and you just can't figure it out, or you want to know what you can't bear to listen to the other side because it's too painful, but you can, or if you want to have a printed.
And painful is right. Or, we didn't say that out loud, did we?
Was that my out loud voice?
I think it was, but that's okay. We'll just say that they're no longer with us. But, some callers are really good, gifted enunciators. And you can listen to every word that they sing on that flip side, and you know exactly what on earth were they saying. And so the cue sheets online, especially on Cedar.net, have been just fabulous to help clear up, that's what that word was.
Right. And you can print them out. You don't have to transcribe. And it's not just records that they have either, because you guys have some that you don't have. And they have some. I did a dance, and I thought it would be fun to do Pussycat. I have the record because it was in a batch of records that I got. I had no clue. I couldn't really get what the figure was, and I was in a hurry. I went and printed it out. I was able to study it. I could present it, at least modify it the way I could so that they could dance it. There's just so much to use the web for that it's a shame not to take advantage of it. I know we're kind of a old-fashioned, a lot of people think we're old-fashioned community, and it's an old-fashioned job that we do. But that doesn't mean we can't make it current. And I'm sure everybody who's got a website, even a club, I'm quite sure that some of your business, and you get some visitors come through that door that would not have come through your door if you did not have a presence online. I do. I try to tell every club I work with, like on a regular basis, get it. It doesn't take much.
I will add to that by saying it doesn't have to be a square dance club that finds you. What happened for me was that I bought a URL a long time ago. I paid for it. I didn't use it. I own isquaredance.com. And I thought, this will be fine. And I just sort of sat on it because I know how to make pages and I know how to do this stuff, but I didn't have time. So I finally put myself up there, and if you go there, my schedule's there. I actually use a Google Calendar, which I import and do all kinds of stuff. But in the top right-hand corner, I added a link that says, have a square dance party. I added it in November 2 years ago. I think I had seen it on, somebody had said something like, this on one of the Square Dance ABC sites. Oh, just say I'm going to have a Square Dance party. Don't call it a Square Dance. Don't call it this. Just call it a party. The day after that I put it up there, I had 3 cold calls for a Square Dance event that had nothing to do with Square Dance land. It had everything to do with, one was a church. One was, actually it was 3 in a week. It was a Square Dance church. One was a soccer club, youth soccer club that was having an end of year party. And then it was a corporate retreat. And I scheduled these 3 dances out. And they say, well, how much do you charge? I'm like, well, it just depends. What are your budgets? And one of them said, well, we budget $500. Well, I suppose I could work for that much. I mean, I do have to take care of licensing and all these other little things. And so I'll tell you, just that, and you click on the link and it has my contact information, email, and I say my rates are negotiable. I can accommodate whatever you want. I think I just edited the page. It's probably a little more lame now. It doesn't say nearly as many things because I was trying to make it a little less busy. But by having that, hanging my shingle out there saying, have a party. And I don't do just squares. I mean, for a while I did. That's all. I just knew squares. That's all I do. So I would teach enough for square dancing, and I would teach just basically an ABC night and a grand square this. And I did one party where I walked in and they said, would you like something to drink? And I'm like, well, maybe a Diet Coke. Oh, we don't have anything diet. All we have is regular soft drinks and beer. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be bad. But it was one of the best times ever. It was okay. I just neglected to set up front my expectations. But what I found is by kind of lowering my expectations, it changes the dynamic of the dance. But still, I'm as accessible as I've ever been because those people where I had those dances say, well, what's your website? I tell them. They save that, and then they look me up. So I've probably, since I've had, just put that on there, on average, 1 dance party a month for the past 2 years. I mean, some months there's been nothing. Some months there's been 4, but about once a month. And I do get anywhere between $300 and $800 for a night's worth of work. And I cannot tell you that would not have, I can tell you, that would not have happened had I not had my webpage, that little link in the top right-hand corner.
The only last thing I'll say about webpage advantage is there's a lot of callers who people don't know. As much as we'd like to think that we're known all over the world, people don't know who I am. And if a booker goes to a festival, North Carolina State Festival, WASCA, National Convention is one, you don't get a chance to talk to. At a national convention, you get a few slots, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 5, less than that to make a good impression. It's not really the place to do bookings. People do, but it's just too crazy. But as a dancer, if I'm walking around specifically looking for people to bring to my club who I think would give a good time, I can make notes in my schedule, and then I'm going to go online. A lot of people I talk to, I'm going to go online, I'm going to see where they live, because I know it says it, but you don't really know anything about them. What levels do they call? What levels do they don't call? What do they look like? How busy are they? And all that is on my website, so they can pre-qualify me.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty. So Stephen's already introduced himself. He's going to talk about social networking, which is a buzzword that you hear a lot. But in this context, I think we're mostly talking Facebook and having a blog. So,
pretty much, Facebook is my best friend, or one of them. Yes, my name is Stephen Cole, and we've talked about holding ourselves up to having a standard, not really holding ourselves up, but having an idea of having a web presence. That is having a home online. What I want to talk about is having a conversation online. And a conversation, you have a choice. When you talk to anybody, and you've seen this anywhere, you have a choice. I can talk with you, or I can talk at you. And you have that choice online. When there are several different options, several different ways to do this. What does it do? What does it provide? if you have a conversation, if you have a discussion, it can be enlightening, it can be educational, it can be simple as a matter of just being in touch with somebody, letting people know that you're a human being, a lot of different ways. Social networking, there are, I think, two main sites these days. You can either be a Facebook user or MySpace. There was another one for a while, and I can't think of what it was. And then there's, with Google, there's Buzz, which is kind of, what's that? It is new, and it's as part of the Google Mail, you can kind of say what you're doing, your little status. When I talk about Facebook, basically, it was created as part of a yearbook project. Somebody, I think it was at Harvard, but I sometimes get it confused with Yale, but an Ivy League school said, I think it's silly to have a yearbook that becomes dead. You take a picture, you put it in a shelf, and you don't see it anymore. I want to keep in touch with my friends from college. So what they did was they created a little site, little place to go that they could put their picture and put a status of what's going on in their lives. Then they could, with that status, they could send, I could create friends. I could invite somebody to be my friend. They do a little search through email. Oh, look, Stephen Cole's on Facebook. I will click this link and I will become his friend. And suddenly you create a group of people, a network, that can communicate with you by looking at what you have published on your site. It is transitive. That means when you become somebody's friend, they see your stuff, you see their stuff. So if you have an update, they have an update. Oh, look, Sally got married to Jim and they have a kid now. Terrific. There's pictures. Terrific. It is a conversation about what's going on in your life. But it is somewhat asynchronous. That means when I have a conversation with, if I call up Kris, I say, Kris, how you doing? She responds. I respond. We respond. There's silence. It's kind of awkward. We move forward. She hangs up on me again. Exactly. We do lunch. That's very synchronous. We're in connection. Here I could say on my Facebook status, if I create an account, stuck in Charlotte, which just so happens if you were to become my friend, you would see that. Last night on my trip, it took me, I left at 9 or got up at 9 a.m., which would be 6 a.m. local time, and I landed at 2 a.m. local time. It was a long day. So I posted my status. I have a phone that lets me connect to my Facebook page and let people know. And then they can respond to that in their time. It's not synchronous. It's just as they see it. Oh, look, poor Steven's stuck. Or somebody said, you're in Charlotte. Call me. I'm like, I can't. I'm in a plane. So and then I'm in Buffalo, and somebody says, oh, you're close to me. Close. She's in Washington, D.C. That's not close. But when you live in Phoenix, it's closer than I've been. So it's all relative. So these are ways to communicate and be part of create people in your circle. Now, the question becomes, if you remember that social networking is about having a conversation, who do you want to have a conversation with, and how? And I asked those two questions kind of for a specific reason. One is, when you let people become your friends on Facebook, they get to see as much as you let them. And I have in one of my handouts some things about privacy. Right now, for me, I have no secrets. I also have an 8-month-old, and I know that when he's a teenager, I'll have none whatsoever. But I don't have secrets. When I post something online, I expect that if I were to be called for a job with the government, that they could do a background search on me, go through all of that, and they're going to find no skeletons. Some bad jokes, maybe a little innuendo, something like that. But I want to have a conversation with the world. I understand that I am, as a Square Dance caller, a public persona. I have a public profile. I might not be the next American Idol. A man can dream. But people are going to look to me at being a public figure. And I know my coworkers are friends of mine. I'm not going to say anything that's going to get me in trouble at work. So I have to be very careful about what I post. The other piece of what you post publicly is that it is really easy to air your frustrations and feelings about situations either publicly or privately. It's not cool to air your dirty laundry. In my former neck of the woods, we had an issue where one spouse left another spouse, and another spouse left another spouse, and those two people hooked up, and it just did not end well for anybody because one person posts something on Facebook. I am not here. Is that me ringing? I don't know. I don't think it's me ringing, but I don't know. Anyway, yeah, my cell phone, my iPhone talks to me now. Anyway, you have, where was I? I'm coming back. Dirty laundry. So, needless to say, people became unhappy. I learned that unfriend is a word, and so people disconnect from that community. And they disconnect from you, and they get upset. And you think face-to-face uncomfortable silences are bad when you send somebody a note and you don't hear anything back, and you don't hear anything back, and you don't know what's going on. Not cool. So when you have your conversations with people, remember that this is a public display. Remember that you are being viewed by more than just your family. Now, there is a way around that. And I'm gonna come to that in a little bit, but well, I might as well do it now. You can create inside Facebook what's called a public fan page, which is a fan page disconnects you. It divorces your personal life from your professional one. And what you can do is inside Facebook say, there's a button for it. I think it's top right hand corner, but it keeps moving because they keep making little changes. You can do a search for it. Create a fan page, click on the link, it says, who are you? And you can tell it, well, I am a public person, public profile, I'm an artist, I'm a musician. And you can say, who do you want people to see this? And you follow the little questionnaire, follow the bouncing balls, and I'm sure that I have a handout for it. And what then you can do is become people, rather than becoming your friends and seeing all of your dirty laundry and being able to make comments on your wall, which is what the Facebook parlance is for kind of your running tabulation of what's going on in your life. You can say, well, you know what, I'm not really comfortable being everybody's friend, but you could be my fan. And then by becoming a fan, you can post things on that fan wall, which are just as public, and you can restrict people making comments and questions, or you can say, oh, public, post pictures, do whatever you want. This is my public face. And you can create, they have a way, once you get 100, have 100 fans, you can create your own URL for it. So you could be Stephen, or what is it? It's facebook.com/Stephen.cole.caller. You'll find me. And you'll see my picture. I have my publicity picture there. I have kind of a running little blog which I'll talk about in a minute, which is kind of what's going on in Square Dance Land for me. And people can make comments and have questions and post things and add to kind of that little social networking. Again, it's a conversation. Now, I'm going to take a little sidebar before I start talking about blogs and say that when you have your conversation, your half of the conversation, and I've had this discussion with some people on the email list, SD callers, when you write something, editing is good manners. I'll say that again. Editing is good manners. Punctuation, capitalization. You don't have to be the perfect speller. Let spell check do its job if you must. Even if you don't let spell check do its thing and you use the wrong there versus there versus there, I don't care. But by having these run-on sentences with no question marks, comments, or periods or commas, it's impossible. If you want people to connect with you, do some of the work up front. And it's being respectful. And if you appreciate your audience will appreciate you, I promise. Now, let's take a step away from Facebook. I did mention MySpace earlier. MySpace to me does the exact same thing, but has a different look to it. I used to be a MySpace user. I haven't touched that profile in forever because it got too busy for me. It just got too cluttered. I didn't enjoy it. There are some people that do. Whatever floats your boat, wherever you want to go, it's a personal preference thing. I'm just saying it's not. Now, the other way to have a conversation with people is using what they call in the web world a blog. Blog stands for, it's a contraction for web log, because people have a way of dropping syllables and squishing words together. Weblog just became blog. That's where it comes from. I didn't make it up. I wish I could have thought of that. I would have trademarked it, made billions of dollars. But a blog is nothing more than an online diary. That's really all it is. And a diary is, again, this is a very public diary, but it's a very accessible one, and you can make it as interactive as you want. So you create an entry, you find a blog host, we'll talk about that in a minute, you write your little entry, you can then say, let people make comments. And you could say, let people make comments that I approve, which would prevent some of your dirty laundry or somebody getting angry at you. You came to my dance and it was horrible. Well, the fact that it wasn't something that was out of your control made this person angry doesn't mean you should be punished for it. So you could say approve all comments, or you could say automatically approve comments. I don't recommend it because the guys that wear black hats in the world have learned how to automatically just post random stuff to people's blogs and Facebook pages and other things. So suddenly it's like, have you seen this great site? It's exactly Russian dating. That's the nice way to put it. It's dancing, but it involves poles or something. It can get really, really, really ugly. So I tend to make sure that anything that I allow people to make comments on, whether it be Facebook, my blog, the blog I have for my son, it doesn't matter. I restrict comments to be at least able to approve them. Now, that said, I also have the ability to say approve the first one. So if I trust Kris to post once, then I'm going to trust her forever because I'm slow that way. A sleeper, exactly. So, what blog software is out there, and what can I do with it? Now, I use WordPress. I like WordPress because it's clean and simple. And by clean, I mean it's not very cluttered. And I don't know if on the handbook or on the handout I actually have pictures of what the actual blog front page looks like. I meant to put a couple different examples, but I was tired and in a hurry because they said, if you don't get it in tomorrow, it's not going to be printed by us. So I just like it because you can also change how it looks. They call them skins. So you can have a very plain skin. It can be very complicated, and there are themes that you can add to change what the front looks like. And I like WordPress. The other kind of popular one that's out there is called Blogger, blogger.com. It's owned by Google. It initially was pretty cluttered. It looks much better than it ever has. And both of them give you the opportunity to create a URL, a Uniform Resource Locator, that has your name in it or some reference to you. For example, the example that I created for the handout is livefoursquares.wordpress.com. If somebody wants it, I had to create it. I can give it to you. It'd be yours. I just have to think of what the passwords are for it. That monkeyer, it could be spinningsquares.wordpress.com. It could be Patty Greene, if it's available. Patty Greene 4, Patty 4 Greene, Kris Jensen. .wordpress. Well, if it's available, then you can use it, and that becomes your shingle. So, now there are some tricks to using a blog that I just want to share with you. They're real simple, and they're real short, and I didn't write these in the handouts, and I probably should have. The first one, again, editing good manners. Second one is you're not writing a mystery novel. When a mystery novel, you save the best for the end. The suspense will kill you. At least that's what they think. When you post on a blog, you put your best stuff first. You tell them what you want to tell them. I had a great dance. It was at the Spinners. or whatever we called our fictional club. Or maybe it's not fictional. And it was on Friday. We had 4 squares, and Patty Greene was the president, and she introduced everybody and had a great time. Then you can go in and elaborate that. But give your best stuff first. The other thing is that in today's culture, if you go back through, if you find me online, I think it's isquaredance.com/blog, you will see that 2 things are very apparent. The first one is the first bunch of blog posts, maybe the first 30, are pages of pages. Because, oh yeah, didn't you know I'm verbose? I was writing novels. I was telling the story of driving to the dance, what the dance was like, where I parked. Exactly. I was. Exactly. Weather, what I wore, who was there, who I saw. And to me, that was a nice narrative. And it made me feel good. I really enjoyed it. And that's cool if you do too. But if you want people to read these things, short, sweet, to the point, I'd say I put it in a paragraph at the very top. I work for a university. What I found is that if the more closer you are to tenure, the fewer lines you read. So 3 sentences is what you get if you're a tenure track, 4 if you're an assistant professor, 5 if you're a staff member, and if it's past that, you're not going to get anybody to read it. So when I write my blogs now, there are a couple paragraphs. I say paragraphs like 3 lines, paragraph, this happened, this happened, this happened. The other thing you'll notice if you go back in time and see how long they are, you'll see that it wasn't that I didn't have a point, it was just that it was just a description of the day. Now, it's a couple paragraphs, and you put the best stuff up front. What do you want to share with these people? And whoever your audience is. I didn't care. I really didn't care. I just wanted to talk, because God knows I like to. And the other thing you'll find is that I post a lot, big space. Post a lot, big space. Post a little, big space. If you want somebody to have a conversation with you, then you need to have the conversation with them. To have the conversation with them is that it is much better for you to post a lot of things in a row, even if you separate them by a day or 2, have them posted so that you have a reason to come back and read. I went, after I think Eli was born, I think I went months without actually posting things. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I've got to be better. And then I wasn't. So what I've tried to do now is try to get something out regularly, once a week, once every 2 weeks. And it might be about a dance. Since I've not had a lot of dances lately, I just kind of find something to write about so that people have a reason to come back. Now, I have tied, it is possible, and I think it's in my handout, I have tied my blog so that it posts inside Facebook. There are some people that live and breathe Facebook. And to you, I have to say to you, I am one of you. That's okay. So people can go to my Facebook fan page and they can read my blog. It's in there. Or they can go to my blog and read my blog. It's in there. The comments don't go. So if you make a comment on my blog page, it doesn't show up on my Facebook page. And if you make a comment on my Facebook page, it doesn't show up on my blog page. But that's okay. I still see all the comments, and I read them, and I respond to some of them. And other ones that are just like, oh, thanks for writing. Oh, I missed this, and I missed that. Let's see. There was one other thing before I called it a night or a day. Editing. Tell the best stuff. Blogs allow for a channeled organization of thought. And by that, you can actually tell a story about what's going on in your life that makes you intriguing and appealing, not just to your square dance population, but there is another nice piece of social networking in that I have a lot of friends that are not square dancers. I know, who knew? They look at my posts on Facebook and they become intrigued. You cannot use Facebook, and it has a little piece that lets you do event posting. You cannot say, I'm going to put an event for a square dance party at this date. You can't use it as a hard sell. I've had friends tell me, don't try to sell this to me, because I had to defriend or unfriend somebody that was trying to sell, I think, Wild Tree, whatever Wild Tree is, or Mary Kay, or Amway or these other direct marketing things. If you try a hard sell, you're going to get a hard resistance because it's asynchronous. They can disconnect you and you'll not know. However, by creating an atmosphere that lets them become curious, you have a subtle, soft sell that then when you say, hey, I have this party, and you can invite them, you can use this events piece to your Facebook page. You can say, I'm going to have this party, send them a little note, and if you've had this conversation, people aren't going to be, what's square dancing? What is that all about? It's going to be, I saw that he's been doing this for a long time, and he had 20 people come to his last party, and I want to hear about that. By having the conversation, you create the ability to have this soft sell, which creates awareness of the product that you have, so that when you have kind of a harder push, maybe around September, hey, we're looking for classmates, would you like to come join us? They have the awareness that lets you translate that into possible new dancers, or at least people that might come to your parties. And I think that's what I got.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. So I want to make a couple of points. One is on blog software. You can use the blogging software, the WordPress software, not just for a formal blog or a traditional blog. You can use it for a club page where it makes it very easy to put entries. The distinguishing factor of a blog is that the most recent things show up at the top. So you could use it to have a club president just put notes about what's happening in the club using the blog software. And WordPress also allows you to put up calendars and put up full pages and things like that. So look into using blogging software even for your website.
The nice thing, since you said that, is that all of the web blog software, all the blog software that's out there, whether you're doesn't matter if it's just WordPress or Blogger, you do all of your website creation inside the web browser. You don't have to code a single solitary thing. You want to add a calendar, you click on the button, it puts the calendar, it tells you, asks you where do you want to put it, puts it where you told it to, you're done. You don't have to code anything. I mean, you sometimes have the option to, but you don't have to know anything about coding to be able to present a online presence using blog software. And it's free. 9 times out of 10. There may be an ad, but there are no polls involved.
Okay. I actually would rather pay $60 a year to own my own website and not have ads. That's just a thing that I have. And I think WordPress.com is pretty clean. You don't get ads much with that. So
the WordPress ads are kind of random, and they're real soft-spoken. So when I've seen a WordPress ad, which I've used for, again, when my son was born, all my family wants to know what's going on. So I created a blog for him. And every now and then something will pop in because it's related to the topic. It does some context-based searches. So it might be baby formula or it might be clothes or something. But it's just a little link, and it just creates eyeballs. The idea behind it is that they're trying to offset their costs.
Okay, I want to make sure that we cover everything that we promised we would in the description. We've talked about email. Email lists are a good way of communicating with your dancers. You can set up an email list if you have your own website. Often the web host provider will provide you with mailing list software. You could also use something like Yahoo Groups or Google Groups, something like that, to set up a mailing list. And that's a good way of doing one-way or two-way communication in a specific group, like with your club. Websites we've talked about. Twitter we haven't talked about yet. How many people tweet? Okay. All right, this is a way of having an asynchronous two-way conversation, kind of, but it's mostly broadcasting. In 140 characters at a time or less. I've seen it being analogous to standing around the water cooler, having a conversation, kind of just with quick conversation with people. You broadcast your tweets. People have to sign up to follow you in order to see your tweets. And
you're not a twit if you use Twitter. You're a tweeter, not
tweeter,
twit.
Yes. it appeals to a younger generation mostly, although Don uses it. So,
he's only 18.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about using Twitter is that it was actually designed to provide headlines. The initial thought behind it was that we're going to give things like the news, NBC, CBS.
No. The original question was, "What are you doing now?"
Yeah, and then you would
answer that. I am eating lunch. I am having coffee for lunch. I am washing dishes, and that was the original premise.
Well, I had heard that it was designed to provide headlines so that way you could go look for more information, and then it had kind of turned from that into a micro blog. So rather than write 2 paragraphs, you get 140 characters, and that's just the guy that wrote it. That's what he picked, and so you can tie your Twitter account into Facebook. You can tie it into any blog software if you want to, and it's the possibilities are endless.
Right. All right. Next on the list is Skype. Skype is basically a way of doing telephone and video over the internet. So there are a number of services that do that. Skype is the most common. One of the more interesting uses that I've heard recently of using Skype in a square dancing context is Clark Baker called a dance over Skype. So he was calling to a square of dancers that was not anywhere close to him. They had a 2-way video set up, and he was calling to them over Skype. And I thought that was really interesting because that would be a way of having callers for small groups where maybe they couldn't afford to bring somebody in, but you don't have to leave home. That's right. Call in your, well, no, it's 2-way video.
Just the top hat.
Right. You can not wear any pants. Okay.
Well, that's scary.
All right, so I thought that was an interesting use. Also, Skype allows you to do long-distance phone calls for a fairly low cost if you are doing a lot of business around the country. Facebook, MySpace, we've talked about that. Clark added Kindle to the list, and that led me to thinking about hardware and things like that. One of the advantages of the new phones that people are using is that they can be connected to their social networks even in the airplanes when they're waiting to take off and things like that. The Kindle would be an interesting idea, possibly if somebody would do a square dance call definition kind of thing and publish it as a Kindle or an ebook that could be read on various ebook readers. So that's a thought to keep in mind. I added to the list Google Voice, which is another telephone application, and one of the things that I like about that is it allows you to get a number, and you could get a number for your club, for example, and this would be a permanent phone number that you can then forward to different phone numbers. So if your club wanted to put a number up on the web for information, but nobody wanted to be the permanent contact for that, or officers change, they could still have that same number, and it would get forwarded to whoever's answering the phones that week or that year. So something to think about is looking at the new internet applications. Google Voice is one of them, but there are others coming along where for a modest price you can get a permanent phone number. As a caller, that can be useful too, to have a permanent phone number that's not tied to your home phone or your cell phone that you can make public and then forward that number to whatever phone numbers you're using at the time. And I think that about covers the list that they had. I would also mention things like Flickr and YouTube for sharing media from your clubs. Right now, if you Google square dancing or if you search for square dancing on YouTube, there are a lot of videos out there, and it's kind of fun to look at that, and it's also something you might think about in terms of using your computer and modern technology to edit videos and put nice videos up on the web, and people will find them and look at them, and it's a way of selling both yourself, if you put yourself up as a caller, or your club, or square dancing in general.
To follow up on the YouTube thing is that a lot of the videos you're going to find are kind of grainy. They're not really polished. And we were talking about this at lunch in that sometimes it makes it a little bit more accessible. It just makes it a little bit more real and more tangible to see what's going on in the clubs around you. And there's a dance that was broadcast up in Seattle, the Seattle area, where they put the video camera, 2 callers, is right behind them. So you can see the back of their heads, their Hilton, and then a floor full of dancers. And it was just really, really cool to see the excitement that these two guys put together for the dance. And it's just a little thing. It's not huge, but it's one more thing to connect you with your square dancing and non-square dancing population.
All right, because we all like to talk, we have less time than we might have had for questions. So, questions, yes. Let me get the...
For the tape, please state your full name, last four of your social, and your mother's maiden name. Where are you from?
I'm John Herr from Denver. I just want to mention, if you put up a website, you have to be really careful if you put music on that website or videos with music in it. You need to check all your laws and everything before you do that, because it could be very dangerous.
Fair use is one thing.
Don Beck from Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. This is just a quick example of how Twitter has helped me recently. A week ago Thursday, I got a call from a local band. Now I'm on Martha's Vineyard, winter population 14,000. I have 90 people following me on Twitter. I finally have worked up to that, which is not very many people, and most of them aren't on the island. But there's somebody who uses Twitter on the island who looks for anything relating to the island and passes along information about local restaurant openings, et cetera, et cetera,
It's
et cetera.
called retweeting.
Retweeting. And this phone call I got Thursday said in 2 days we're doing a square dance about 5 miles from where you live on the island, and we haven't heard back from our caller yet, who's a newer contra dance cure. Can you do it? And I had to say, yes, I'm available. I'd love to. And let me tell you the difference between Western and the traditional you do. And went over there and we practiced some singing calls, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did the dance 2 days later with a group I've never worked with. But I went on Twitter and I said just what I said to you, but in 140 characters. And put out some keywords that I know this person that retweets everything would do. And within an hour, there was an announcement to their 5,000 followers that come to this benefit dance on Friday at this time at the town hall. And I'm not sure how many people showed up as a result of it, but
Somebody did.
Somebody's got to. It's got to have helped somewhat.
Debbie Cedar from Los Olivos, California. So I'm the one who has the cedar.net you may have heard of in this panel. And for those of you for whom some of this may be a bit overwhelming, like I don't understand half of what they're talking about, and I don't know how to get a domain, or I don't know if I want to go that step, we have a service on our website where you can freely sign up, put a profile of yourself or your club or your event on our website. And I've got examples here that you can look at if you want to come see me later.
I would add to that it's Google is your friend on this, and if you Google a caller who does not have a personal website, cedar.net is what comes up first if they're listed there. So,
Virgil Forbes out of Maryland. We finally convinced our local federation to put a website up under MarylandSquareDancing.com, real novel. The first year it was up, the first quarter, we had about 4,000 hits. Now, 3 years later, I'm doing the analysis now. It looks like for the quarter just ended, we had over 21,000 hits, roughly 30% of them from out of area. So it is, as she said, a worldwide presence.
The other thing we were talking about at lunch is that in the past 2 weeks, I have seen an explosion in the number of Facebook fan pages that callers have been putting out. Not just callers, but caller organizations and dance record companies. So you're going to see festivals and more people kind of get information out there through these fan pages. And it's like one person figures it out, next person does, and you can always ask anybody.
Free.
And it's free. Free. Did I see a hand over there first? Hand over here. I feel like I'm an auctioneer.
Louis Friedlander with the 60th National Square Dance Convention in Detroit. The state of Michigan has a website, and they allow all the clubs to go on and do postings of dances, flyers, etc. Got a call one evening from a gentleman, a German from Cincinnati, visiting Cincinnati, Ohio, drove 5 hours to our dance because he could not find a mainstream dance any closer online. Drove 5 hours, danced 2.5 hours, and drove 5 hours back to his hotel. So being online is a big help.
François Desmarais, caller. How do you make sure that if somebody Googles, first of all, keywords, how do you make sure you have the right keywords and that you don't end up on page 5 of the search results?
A lot of that is kind of a crapshoot, unfortunately. You can pay companies that promise to make sure that you're up at the top. I have found that if your site is active, meaning you have text with maybe your opening paragraph says, I'm a square dance caller in, the eastern part of this particular state, because it indexes text. Some people make the mistake that they have a PDF flyer, that's their website. You're never going to get found because there's no text to be indexed. There's also things called meta tags that you can put specific keywords in. I don't know what the magic bullet is to get higher results except being active.
There are two other ways, including the meta tags. Like if you use something like WordPress, there is a button that says, or a sub-site that says, or a sub-page that says, what search items do you want to be found at? It doesn't use those exact words, but it's the search criteria. The other thing you can do to help promote yourself is get other people to link to your page. Because so if I had Kris linked to my page, and I had Patty linked to my page, and I had Brian linked to my page, and Ruth and Wanda linked to my page, the more people that actually travel into my page, the more search engines are going to say, oh, look, this person, you can get to this site from here, from sites A, B, C, and D. The more traffic that you can possibly generate, the higher you're going to go on the result of search. Now, if you do a search for Stephen Cole, you're going to get, I think he's an author, and I'm not even sure what genre he writes. And there's one guy that's a television producer type. I'm not really sure. He's kind of pretty. I haven't quite figured out what's going on. But if you do a search for Stephen Cole, caller, I go right to the top. And right below me is, I think, my Cedar page. So that's, I don't just use one resource. The Cedars have been very kind in having this resource. I make best use of it. I don't want to say I use it, because that sounds like I abuse it, but I am very appreciative of it, and I don't neglect it. I have a profile there. Any place that I can, I do. Questions? More? I mean, we don't have all the answers, but we can find them. That's what Google's for. I think Virgil has one more.
Virgil Forbes again from Maryland. Just as a question, I'm in process of trying to push the web for the local dancers. And one of the things I want them to do is most communities in Maryland have their own website. Most recreation councils have their own website. Is there some magic word or some magic person to talk to make sure that they let the square dance clubs link from the local community into the website?
Usually, if you go to the web page, there's usually a link called Webmaster, or for information. I would just send them an email. Go to the local Chamber of Commerce. Hey, we're new. We've got a website. We'd like to link to your page. Put us up, please.
There are also some communities have online directories and online calendars where they let you enter events and such. So you might look for that. I know Albuquerque has a a citywide calendar where you can create an account and enter events. And we've used that for some square dancing events.
And some places will say, I'll add your page if you add mine. So the more trackbacks you get, the more linkbacks you get, the more they become relevant. So it's what's the word?
Synergy.
Yeah, exactly. Synergy. It's synergistic. All right. Did I see another hand? Did I see somebody? I thought maybe it's like an auctioneer.
All right.
Sold.
Well, thank you for coming to the first tech marketing session. If you liked it, let
us know.
Let the home office know. Thanks to Patty Greene and Stephen Cole.
Take handouts if you have a dog or something.